Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. Both Ray Stevens and Willie Nelson, and perhaps others, have recorded the humorous song, I'm My Own Grandpa. If you've never heard it, here are the words. Now, many years ago, when I was 23, I was married to a widow who was pretty as could be. This widow had a grown-up daughter, had hair of red. My father fell in love with her, and soon the two were wed. This made my dad my son-in-law and changed my very life. My daughter was my mother 'cause she was my father's wife. To complicate the matter, even though it brought me joy, I soon became the father of a bouncing baby boy. My little baby then became the brother-in-law to Dad, and so became my uncle, though it made me very sad. For if he was my uncle, that also made him the brother of the widow's grown-up daughter, who of course was my stepmother. My father's wife then had a son that kept him on the run, and he became my grandchild, for he was my daughter's son. My wife is now my mother's mother, and it makes me blue, because she is my wife, she's my grandmother too. I'm my own grandpa. I'm my own grandpa. It sounds funny, I know, but it really is so, for I'm my own grandpa. Now, I never really worked through all that in detail, but it reminds me a bit of the confusion caused by Mary of Clopas. Our topic this week is to talk about gospel women, women who were named in the gospel, and Mary of Clopas is one of those. But when you get down to trying to figure out who she really was, it can be a bit like the lyrics to that song. You see, this Mary is mentioned twice in John's Gospel, once at the foot of the cross and once when they go to anoint Jesus' body on Easter morning. The problem is that the first time she is mentioned as the sister of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Suddenly, things seem strange. If she were Mary's sister, who would give two daughters in the same family the same name? Both daughters named Mary? That's not likely. A lot of deep scholarship has uncovered this much more likely scenario. Mary of Clopas and Mary, the mother of Jesus, were sisters-in-law. Mary of Clopas almost certainly was married to a man named Clopas, who happened to be the brother of Joseph, the earthly father of Jesus. So Clopas was Jesus' uncle, and his wife Mary was his aunt. There are lots of Marys all over the gospel. Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, Mary, the sister to Martha, and Mary of Clopas. Each Mary needed a way to be distinguished from the others, and so this one is identified by her husband, Clopas. The interesting thing is that it seems that identifying her with Clopas was enough for the early church to know whom they were talking about. So it seems that Clopas and Mary were leaders in the early church and would have been recognizable by name and reputation as faithful believers. Then it gets even more significant. One of the first questions the very early church needed to face was who was going to be in charge. It was quickly decided that the 12 wouldn't fulfill this role. They were sent out to preach and tell the story of Jesus. It turned out that James, the brother of Jesus, was chosen to lead the Jerusalem church. Eventually, however, James was one of the earliest Christian martyrs, and so early on the church in Jerusalem needed a new leader. A man named Simeon was chosen, and he led the church for what may have been 50 years. Simeon was the child of Clopas and Mary. There is tradition that Clopas and Mary worked as apostles, also spreading the faith, and their support of their son leading the church was surely important. Like with other women we've talked about this week, there are some things we can glean from the story of Mary of Clopas. The crucifixion had to have been a difficult time for Mary, the mother of Jesus, and to have her sister-in-law to walk with her through her sorrow and grief must have been a great comfort. In the same way, we are called to live in compassion for one another, walking with one another and sharing the burdens life brings. I also think that Mary of Clopas may be a good model for many of us who are the quiet, steady supporters of the church and God's work among us. She didn't call attention to herself, but she was there, offering herself and her support where and when it was needed. The church needs people just like these. Perhaps you never considered that Jesus had brothers, sisters, cousins, uncles, and aunts like Mary of Clopas. One thing is certain: Jesus has family, even now. Together, we are the family of God. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.